Predict, pick, and prevail in your fantasy football leagues with Nick Giacobbe and Nick Cap. From breakouts to busts, superstars to sleepers, these are the guys that will help you achieve fantasy glory. This is the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast.
Welcome everybody to Season 2, Episode 73 of the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast, where we give you our predictions, our picks, with the hopes that we hope we prevail throughout the rest of the first round of the 2022 Fantasy Football Playoffs and the rest of your 2022 Fantasy Football Playoffs. I am your host, Nick Giacobbe, and joining me is Nick Cap. Nick, we're recording late Sunday night. It's a little bit later than we normally do because I was at the Bucs game today. So we have a lot of information that we could share with you. How did your divisional round, whatever you want to call it, how did your round one go in your fantasy playoffs?
So in my 14-person league, where I lost Jonathan Taylor and started Zach Wilson, I am walking out with the W.
Wow.
So I will be walking into championship week because it's only 2 weeks for the playoffs.
So next week's your championship then. That's it for you.
Next week is championship for me.
Okay.
In that league, I have one seed in another league where I was on bye. I have one league where the playoffs start next week, and I won my win and in game, so I'm in there. And
how long is that playoff then?
2 weeks as well, 4 people.
Okay.
And then in our league for my playoff game, I did lose, unfortunately, playing Rex Burkhead, but Rex Burkhead wouldn't have been the difference. But I had 5 guys on my team score less than 5 points, so whatever.
What do you have left? 3 out of 5 leagues, or what do you have left going in?
Yeah, 3 out of 5.
Okay. You made the playoffs on what, 4 out of 5?
Yes, 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5, I'll be in the playoffs.
Did
Solid season overall. And for the 4-person league, the loser gets guaranteed a good amount of money. So either way, I'm pretty good with that one.
Was my mic muted for that?
No, I did not hear you yell at Russ. I just watched you.
Yeah, I think he was biting his paw or something, and he's not allowed to bite. The licks aren't as bad, but not allowed to bite, mister. Anyway, so for me, since me and Nick I don't even really know how each other did today. I'm in the playoffs in 3 leagues. 2 of them really matter because our teams are really good. The other one, my team's not as good and probably get bounced anyway. In my Dynasty League, unfortunately, I'm going to lose right now. I'm down 10 points. He has Saquon and Terry McLaurin. I have nobody left. So, yep, I'm going to lose that one. Losing Jonathan Taylor stunk. I did play the Panthers defense, who only got 3 points. I dropped the Pittsburgh defense. I should have played Cleveland, who was 19 on my bench right now. Olave stunk with only 8 points. So, it sucks. It sucks because I'm not going to have this trophy next year. Just how it goes. I still have a chance of winning the points, so a good chunk of money right now. I'm 3rd in points. I'll be behind about 40 points, so not terrible. But yeah, it sucks to lose that one. So I do have a pretty solid team. My 13-1 team, I am up 149 to 139. He has the Packers defense tomorrow. If I lose, I'm going to be really miserable because I had some tough matchups. Amon-Ra St. Brown had the Jets. Stephon Diggs played in the snow game. Low point total. Josh Jacobs against the Pats D, low point total. ETN against the Cowboys, low point total. So I had some really rough matchups, and I still put up 149, which is really good for this league because there's really no bonuses. If I lose, I'll probably end up being the 3rd highest scorer on the week. 8 teams make the playoffs, by the way. So it would suck. It would really suck that I wouldn't have a bye when I was clearly the best team and, wouldn't advance, but that's fantasy for you. My 3rd league, I did have a pretty dominant win, but it is a team where I've lost Cooper Kupp, Kyler Murray, Dameon Pierce, and Cortland Sutton. So the team is decimated. It probably won't make it past next week, but anything can happen, but still, I'm going to be going up against Travis Kelce and Mahomes against Seattle. So that'll be fun. So
oof, have fun with that one.
Yep. Not looking forward to it. So my Christmas Eve is going to be ruined. Anyway, if this is your first time listening to this show, thank you so much. I want to thank everybody that came out to the live yesterday. We had a really good turnout. We really do appreciate all you guys that came out, asked some questions, and joined us for some fun to help you with your first round of your fantasy playoffs. I do want to promote this right now. We are doing a special live show this Saturday. Normally, the live show is going to be on Sundays, but going forward, they're going to be on Saturdays for the last 2 weeks of your fantasy playoffs, and we'll probably do a week 18 one on a Sunday as well. But the next 2 weeks, definitely going to be Saturday, especially this Saturday, Christmas Eve, because there's 11 games on Christmas Eve, only like 3 on Christmas Day. So it's going to be 9:30 a.m. Eastern time on Christmas Eve, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Facebook and YouTube is Primetime Fantasy Podcast. Twitter is PrimeTimeFFPod. This is the perfect opportunity to let us help you win your fantasy matchups and hopefully get a nice Christmas from that. So please join us for that. On our Monday show, which that's what today is, we give you the news coming out of Sunday. We'll talk about each game and we'll give you our biggest takeaway from each game. And we will give you projections for Monday Night Football. You can listen to the show on all audio streaming platforms, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor. If you're on iTunes or Spotify, please give us the 5-star rating and a review. If you'd rather watch and listen to the show, go to our YouTube channel, Primetime Fantasy Podcast. Hit the subscribe button. Drop a like on this video or any other video that you do watch now or in the future. Keep connecting and interacting with us on social media. Primetime FFPod on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. Then Facebook and YouTube is Primetime Fantasy Podcast. Injury updates and news. We have one from Thursday Night Football. Tyler Lockett has a broken finger. I don't know exactly which finger it was. I don't know if they specified, but it's conflicting reports going around. The first one I saw is he's pretty much definitely out the next 2 weeks. And I wrote he should be dropped in most leagues. But then I saw it's possible he only misses 1 week. So what are your thoughts? Do you keep him on your roster for another week and see what happens?
Yeah, I mean, he's been consistent. I mean, like, it's very hard to, kind of shut him down. Even I know he got hurt near the end of the game. He still put up 16 points. I think he's only had 2 games and maybe 3 under double-digit fantasy points all season. So you're talking about Mr. Consistency from the guy that we both agree is probably the streakiest player over the last 3 or 4 seasons in fantasy football. So I think you still have to roster him. If you could throw him out there, absolutely do. And you saw this week, there were a handful of injuries. We'll touch more on them tomorrow once we have full updates. But I mean, there's a lot of guys that you're going to play that you did not think would be rostered at this point in the season.
Yeah. It's going to be tricky going forward. Jonathan Taylor had an ankle injury. It is a sprained ankle. Suffered it on the first drive, which sucks for a lot of fantasy managers. He probably lost a lot of fantasy games, I think. He definitely lost me my fantasy game, that's for sure. He left the game in the first quarter. We'll need more updates as the week goes on, but he may not be there for you next week. And doesn't matter for me because I'm out on that. Well, actually, it does matter. I want to win the points in that league, so it kind of does matter. But anyway, that's not good. Dameon Pierce with an ankle injury is placed on IR, so you could drop him in all fantasy leagues that aren't keeper leagues or dynasty leagues, and that kind of sucks. He's having a pretty solid year, and the Texans' offense has kind of rejuvenated the last 2 weeks. So they were competing in both of those games against the Chiefs, and obviously against the Chiefs today, and last week against the Cowboys. So that sucks, but it is what it is. Can't do anything about it. Moving on to the weekend wrap, I'm going to do each game from Saturday and Sunday, and we will give you our biggest takeaway from each one. So let's start off with the Indianapolis Colts against the Minnesota Vikings. The greatest comeback in NFL history. Kirk Cousins.
Yep.
What is your biggest takeaway from this one, Nick?
So I have 2. One is going to have to do with more of the waiver wire episode. So Jonathan Taylor, as Nick just spoke about, went out very early on, left in the first drive of the game. And then when they were up by a lot, the leading rusher was not Deion Jackson. It was Zach Moss. Zach Moss saw 24 carries. Deion Jackson only saw 13. So I'm going to have to go back and check some of these snap counts and like actually go watch like clips from the game because I couldn't watch it live. But if that's the case, I mean, Zach Moss is going to have to be played. You're getting the situation of the guy that was drafted as the first overall running back in fantasy football. So Zach Moss is probably going to be the number 1 guy on the waiver wire come Tuesday, unless if we see news that Taylor is playing, which I highly doubt if they took him out that early. I know that the report was saying that he's fine and will be fine, but their season's pretty much over. There's no reason to push him out there.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Jefferson was awesome. A 30-point game that's going to win me a matchup and potentially lose me another one, depending how Baker Mayfield does against the Packers defense tonight, I should say. And Kirk Cousins, just great game. If you played Kirk Cousins, you probably won this week. It'd be very hard for you to lose, I think. Baltimore Ravens against the Cleveland Browns. What is your big takeaway from this one?
Every single one of these players absolutely sucks. I don't think any of them should be played in fantasy for the rest of the season. I am not a fan of any of these guys. It was absolutely miserable to watch. Deshaun Watson has been absolutely horrendous. Like Donovan Peoples-Jones caught a touchdown, which gave him a fine day. Amari Cooper had an all right day, but like nobody is showing any ceiling from either of these teams. Like outside of Mark Andrews, like there is a very good reason to bench every single player from each of these teams.
I disagree. I think J.K. Dobbins is back to the J.K. Dobbins that we, kind of thought was being drafted. And I wasn't drafting J.K. Dobbins, but people who believe in J.K. Dobbins. Back-to-back weeks with over 13 fantasy points. Back-to-back weeks with 120 rushing yards. Now, I wish he would get more receptions. Only got one target. Did he get? Yeah, he had one reception today. Didn't have one last week. He had a touchdown last week. He's averaging over 8 yards per carry last 2 weeks. So I love his production. I love that they're running the offense through him. I think he's very playable over these next few weeks. He has Atlanta, Pittsburgh, and Cincinnati, or at least just Atlanta. I guess Atlanta and Pittsburgh, but I would definitely play him next week against the Falcons. And then when Lamar comes back, his rushing upside might take a little bit of a hit, but the offense will score more fantasy points, so I think that will only help him. So I think Dobbins is very playable. As for the Browns, I think Deshaun's going to take another 2 or 3 weeks. I don't think we'll see. I think we can only judge Deshaun Watson from a football standpoint. I'm saying that from a football standpoint until we got to give him until next year to actually make a pure judgment. As for fantasy football this year, can't trust Deshaun Watson, can't play Deshaun Watson. I think you could still play Amari Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones depending on the matchup. Chubb isn't taking a hit, but the other two, I think it depends on the matchup. In my dynasty league, I still have to play him next week. I don't have another option when I'm going for the points. That's just the reality of it. So, moving on to the Saturday night game, the snow game, Miami Dolphins versus the Buffalo Bills. It was hilarious watching snowballs get thrown around the field. What is your big takeaway from this one?
It's more so for next year. It's going to be just draft Josh. Josh Allen has been a freaking monster this year. I think he's a QB2 on the season. I think Jalen Hurts overtook him this week.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been electric the entire year. He has one game under 17 fantasy points. He's been phenomenal on the ground. I think he only has 2 games or 3 games under 40 rushing yards. He's had multiple passing touchdowns in all but 4 games this year. Like, he's been so dominant for fantasy, and there's kind of no reason not to draft him now. He's averaging 25 points per game on the year and has really not had any bad games. He's been absolutely matchup proof. Like it's literally going to be just draft Josh for me now, because if he's available, there's going to be no one in the 3rd or 4th round where he's going to go in his ADP that's going to match his points per game.
Sure. I don't really have another takeaway. I mean, I wrote that the snow game didn't really affect players as bad as I thought it would. It's mainly from the Dolphins side of things. Waddle and Hill both had good games. Obviously the running backs had good games. Diggs had a pretty bad game, but I don't know if that was because of the snow or something else. So, Sunday games: Philadelphia Eagles versus the Chicago Bears. Your big takeaway from that one?
I went from just draft Josh to just play Justin. Justin Fields has been absolutely electric for fantasy since week 5. He has not scored under 18 points in any of his matchups since week 6. He's had a rushing touchdown in all of his matchups except for this past week where he had 95 rushing yards. He has multiple 100-yard games on the season. Pretty much every game after week 6 was over 70 yards on the ground. He has 1 game since week 5 without a passing touchdown as well. He only has 4 turnovers in that span. So he has been like straight up dominant, like to the Josh Allen level since then. And it's the whole proof of why you don't need to be the best quarterback in the world. Like, Justin Fields has not been an all-world talent, but his ability to run and create time for himself has allowed himself to exceed in fantasy. Like, he is not a great passer, but he's putting up Lamar's MVP's numbers without the wins. Like, so he's going to go break the rushing record before the end of the year that Lamar set. And like you're going to have to draft him next year. And I don't want to worry about the matchup. Next week he has Buffalo. I don't care. I'm just putting him out there. He did this to the Eagles defense.
All right. You have a note here also that David Montgomery has 4 straight games, over 14 fantasy points, and that's without Khalil Herbert. I think he's designated to return next week. I wouldn't bench Montgomery or anything. I wouldn't be super worried about him, but it is interesting to see how they'll split that. Another quarterback, Jalen Hurts, 3 rushing touchdowns, came up big in the first round of your fantasy playoffs, and both of those Eagles receivers have to be played every single week. This feels like the 3rd week in a row that they both had over 100 yards in big games. So, you got to play them both weeks because that offense is going to put up a lot of fantasy points. Miles Sanders did not, though. We were wrong on that one. But anyway.
No. I trust him, and he does that to me. I hate him again. I have to.
Can't do it. The Falcons and the New Orleans Saints. Your big takeaway from this one?
Juwan Johnson, since week 7, he has eclipsed 50 yards once, And he has eclipsed 12 fantasy points 5 times. He's played 7 games since that span. One of those he left early on with an injury. Yeah, I mean, this guy's become very relevant for fantasy. And next week he goes against Cleveland, who's not very good to the tight end position. So get ready to go play Jawan Johnson, who's only rostered in 15% of leagues.
Tyler Algier clearly took over the running back one role here. I wonder if they're going to play him more going forward since he's rookie. Cordell Patterson's 32. Falcon season is not technically over, but they probably won't make the playoffs. I wonder if they play the kids and see what they got. Drake London also back-to-back games at 14 fantasy points. Do you think he could be trusted next week against Baltimore or the championship against Cleveland?
No.
I don't know. I think you could flex him. 7 receptions.
Desmond Ridder had
97
today. Passing yards.
And 70 of them went to Drake London. I don't know. He's getting the volume, though.
Yeah, I mean, but they're a true run-first team.
Yeah, I get it.
Can't get it. I can't get behind it this year.
All right.
Maybe next year.
The Detroit Lions against the New York Jets.
So my first note was no comment, and now I want you to read the second note because I wanted to slap you across the face when I read it.
Why? It's a legitimate note.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No.
How is the Lions offense really good, or is the Jets D overrated?
The Lions put up 20 points. 7 of those came off of a punt return for a touchdown. And the other 7 came off a 4th and 1 50-yard touchdown to a backup tight end. The first blown coverage of the day by the Jets.
What was their total yardage?
I think a little over 350, which is solid.
It's
but
solid.
The Lions have consistently put up over 420 yards. So
I'm just saying. I thought that the Jets defense was going to play very well in this one. I'm not saying they didn't play well. I'm just saying I thought like again. I'm going to preface this. I was driving to Tampa and I sat in the Tampa Stadium, so I did not catch everything, but I did see the Lions on Red Zone a lot. Like when I was looking at my phone or when I was in Tampa, the Lions were on Red Zone a lot.
They scored 13 points because of their offense. I don't want to hear
You're right, but I'm trying to figure out.
And the Jets weren't able to force a turnover, which was kind of surprising, but they forced a turnover in I think every game or all but one other game this year.
Well, then the take that you're making me believe in is that the Lions offense is just really good, and you shouldn't fade the Lions.
Yeah, the Lions offense is good. The Jets defense ain't overrated, buddy.
That's why I asked the note. We're having the conversation.
Defense in the league.
That's why I put the note in there. I put the note in there.
Unbelievable. I couldn't believe it.
This is why I put the note in there. It shouldn't get you heated. That's why I'm having a conversation.
I read the 3 words together: Jets D overrated, and I said, no, they're not.
That's why we have a conversation. That's why we have a conversation.
Oh Lord, not the glasses.
Oh boy.
Not Shay.
Following that note, I put that Trevor plays Dallas next.
No, Trevor plays the Jets next. Thursday night.
Yeah,
he just
cooked out. So we'll talk about that in a second because this is going to make. I think Trevor's performance is going to make our discussion points a bit different than they could have been. So last thing I want to mention, Zach Wilson and Garrett Wilson had Garrett Wilson had really good games. I know it's the Lions defense, but from a fantasy perspective, how much do you trust them going forward? And I, as a Jet fan, did Zach Wilson lose in the game? Because looking at the I know he had a pick 6 or something, but looking at the box score, I mean, he had 300 yards and 2 touchdowns, so it didn't look like he had a bad game. It seems like, I mean, he wasn't putting up 300 yards before.
He converted. They put a lot of pressure on the O-line. He converted. I don't know if you caught anything at the end of the game.
I caught. I mean, it looked like the last drive. He looked
20 seconds or no?
I did not. I think I was about to sit down in my seat at that point.
So Zach Wilson rolled out of the pocket on 4th and 19 and converted it to put the Jets in field goal range. They called timeout with 1 second left, and Greg Zuerlein went wide right on the kick. So it would have sent it to overtime. So he put the Jets in a position to tie the game, send it to overtime. The receivers look frustrated for the majority of the game, if I'm being honest. You could tell that they preferred Mike White out there. But they did still see production. I think Elijah Moore had his best game with Wilson so far. Garrett Wilson had his 3rd best game with Zach Wilson so far. So there's still frustration with him in the room. But on the short week, I do think you're getting Wilson this week.
It's I feel like it's a really tricky situation with the Jets, and I kind of feel bad for you as a Jet fan and you Jet fans, because the defense is really solid. They've drafted some good offensive pieces, and there's still drama, and it's not just with the players now. It feels like it's with the coaching staff as well. It feels like the owner and the coach have friction, quarterback is friction, the receivers, like it's just like the whole thing just seems like, I don't know. I think it sucks for you guys that like you're finally putting pieces together and nobody can really get on the same page.
It's all good. Next year's our year. Let's jump the next game, though, and get to the point you just
Yeah, let's do that. So Dallas Cowboys versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. I want you to talk about this first one because I think you've been a little bit higher on him than I probably have. So you could take it away and then speak about how it could probably affect Thursday's game if possible.
Sure. So I'm going to pull up. Nick, you sent me this earlier today, which was a great sticking point. So since the bye week, the last 4 games of Trevor Lawrence, he has put up, this doesn't include rushing as well, 1,186 passing yards, 68 completion percentage, 11 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Those matchups include Baltimore, Detroit, Tennessee, and Dallas. Dallas, of course, being the toughest one. The other 3, not as bad, but Dallas, he absolutely smoked, and they have had one of the better defenses in the league. On the ground, he did also see a touchdown, and I think he put up close to 80 rushing yards over that 4-week span, so not a lot of aid, but you're talking about a 12-to-1 interception touchdown ratio or touchdown interception ratio now. So Trevor Lawrence, up until his bye week, was the QB 10 for fantasy. Now he's jumped up to the QB 9. After it updates today, I assume he's going to be probably around 7. He's starting to look like the number 1 overall pick that he was last year. I mean, he's been a beast. He has 1 game without a touchdown this year. Actually, sorry, let me correct myself. He had a touchdown on the ground in that one. Over the last 5 games, he's averaging around 24 points per game. The only players in mind that are averaging more are Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and Justin Fields. So, I mean, Trevor Lawrence next year is going to be dominant. Now he walks into the Jets and then, which is, I think, a tougher matchup. And then he goes into Houston for his championship week. So it's like, I think he's going to be another guy where it's like people are going to win or lose their fantasy matchup on him, because you're either going to trust the consistency and just play him against these tougher defenses, or you're going to bench him because of the tough matchup. And you might be right, you might be wrong. I think
and here's the thing. I mean, the Titans and Cowboys are the last 2 defenses he's faced, and he's looked good against both of them. So it's like, I know the Jets defense you believe is the best in the league, and I think they're up there.
Number two.
Okay. Number 2. Okay, so I think they're up there. But I'm curious to see how he plays against the Jets defense. I don't know. I still probably wouldn't want to play him, but it does.
This is like a couple weeks ago when you wanted to see Justin Fields versus the Jets defense, because you wanted a real gauge of how good of a quarterback.
And we gauged him today, and he was excellent.
Yeah,
I would play him against the Jets defense. My other note here from this game is that Zay Jones, last 5 weeks, 7+ targets, has over 14 fantasy points in 4 out of those 5. I believe he's earned a spot in your lineups if Trevor's playing well. And I know you can't figure that out before the game, right? It's all a guessing game. But, for example, Thursday Night Football, Zay Jones will not be going up against Sauce Gardner, I don't think. I think that'll be Christian Kirk. So
he'll have DJ Reed, who, according to PFF, has ranked as a top 5 corner in the league this season as well.
I can't stand PFF. They gave Sherman a low grade every year, and Sherman's going to be.
I don't like PFF either. It's just.
I know. I get it. It's a gauging point. My point being, depending on your matchups, if somebody says to us, "Should I play Zay Jones?" and I looked at your team, I wouldn't say to you, "Oh, he's a really bad matchup against the Jets." I'm not super scared of him, considering he's the number 2 option and he's getting a lot of volume from Trevor Lawrence. Okay, so now we're going to move back in the order here. The Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers defense really let me down, man. They really let me down. That was just
let me down too, bud.
That entire Panthers team, I think, let people down. Besides DJ Moore, and I don't know who's starting DJ Moore. I'm sure some people are if you're in a 14 or 16 man league, but I don't think many are starting him by choice. But overall, I think the Panthers are really a disappointing team today. I don't think those running backs can be trusted the next 2 weeks. I think you got to find other options. And if there are no other options, that sucks. You may not find other options, but
they cost me my my playoff one of my playoff game today. They have now hit my no-fly zone.
I don't know who's going to be a league winner per se, but it's not going to be the Panthers running backs. I think there's a chance for 2-3 weeks ago that Dante Foreman looked like the guy, but no,
And now he has Detroit and Tampa, two of the best teams against running backs.
Tampa's really good. Tampa's really good with the front seven. Their defense is still good. We'll talk about them in a little bit, but yeah. So I don't want to play either of them. But what's your big takeaway?
I mean,
that might be it.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's not much that I feel like I learned. I mean, Deontay had his best game of the year, but it came off absolute perfection from backup quarterbacks. 10 targets, 10 catches. Didn't hit the 100-yard mark, hasn't all year. Didn't find a touchdown either, which he hasn't all year. So, I mean, it's the same exact story next week, Vegas. Like, is he more trustable? Maybe, but they're probably going to get Pickett back, and Pickett with him has still been inconsistent. So, I still won't trust him.
Well, here's the thing. The quarterbacks are very different over there because Pat Fryermuth, I think, had a goose egg without Kenny Pickett. And I don't think George Pickens had a good game either, but Deontay Johnson had a better game with Mitch. So you almost got to pick your Steelers depending on the quarterback at this point, which is frustrating.
Yep.
Kansas City Chiefs against the Houston Texans. This game went to overtime, which is a little shocking. What's your big takeaway from this one?
I mean, what the hell was that game? Like, I remember saying,
this is why you don't trust a Texan. This is why I said, I was saying Chris Moore might be a boomer bust play, but he busted. This is why I do not trust a Texan in my fantasy lineup.
Yeah, no, I played Sexy Rexy. Gave me 3.7 points on the first drive. I was so hyped. I was like, all right, here it comes. Did not find another fantasy point, not even a decimal of a point, not a touch, not a target for the rest of the game. Disgusting. Pitiful. Yeah, don't trust your Texans. Don't trust Chris Moore. I don't care if I tell you to play him over. If you remember this clip, do not play a Texan.
Yeah.
Do not do it.
Yep. So you put the note here that Casey's top heavy, and I agree. Kadarius Toney did not have a good game. I think he's got to be dropped. He's true boomer bust, and I don't think he's going to be booming anytime soon. Pacheco had a decent game with 8.7 fantasy points in standard PPR leagues. Didn't have a touchdown. McKinnon had another awesome game. I think those two can both still kind of be locked into lineups. Juju had 16, another good game. So, I think he's another one you could kind of trust, especially against Seattle next week. You could play all your Chiefs against Seattle next week. On to the 4:00 slots. And I'll be honest with you, because I was at the Bengals Tampa game, these are the games I didn't really see besides the Bengals game, which was probably the only one worth seeing. So I'm gonna let Nick kind of speak a little bit more about this than I, since I'm going off, stats. But the Cardinals and the Broncos. What was your big takeaway from this one? Because when I checked the score at halftime, I think it was like 6-3, and then I saw that Denver won, obviously, which does suck for the Seahawks.
So the last 2 quarters of this football game and the last 2 quarters of last week's football game for Denver, their offense has been like really freaking good. The biggest shock I think I have had to say this entire year. They're moving the ball very effectively. They're finding the end zone. They scored 28 last week, 24 this week. They're starting to get in stride, and it's annoying because it hit really late in the year. But next week they have the Rams. Following week they have the Chiefs. The Chiefs who they just posted 28 on. They'll have Russell Wilson back, and Russell Wilson, as the Seattle fan going up against the Rams,
that's a bust. Aaron Donald's going to eat him alive.
So I think Donald is probably going to be out for the game. Donald's already ruled out for the game, actually.
The Denver game?
Yeah. So
what's his injury?
I think that they were benching him for the year, like some excuse of an injury, but whatever. I don't want to say like the Broncos are going to go win you a title, but I mean the players have been playing well. They're executing. I think Jerry Jeudy's going to have to be a must start, even if Jalen Ramsey's on the other side.
Latavius Murray had 130 yards and a touchdown today.
Yeah.
By the way, the Cards are dead if Trace McSorley is their starting quarterback any of these weeks. They're dead. Colt McCoy is serviceable against an okay defense or a bad defense, but not against a good defense. The New England Patriots against the Las Vegas Raiders. Oh, man, Chandler Jones at the end there. Hilarious. What were they doing?
Dude, you saw the clip, right?
It makes no sense. Like if you're snapping the ball with 0 seconds left, you're obviously not going to score a touchdown or a field goal. At least you're not assuming you are. So why not just like go down? Like, what are you doing? What was the goal there? Go to overtime.
So what's it called? Do you know the play in the NBA championship where J.R. Smith had the ball, ran it back, and didn't pass it to LeBron or take a shot when the game was tied? It was like the same exact thing.
LeBron walks up to him. He's like,
from what the announcer said and what the reporter said, it sounded like Jacoby Myers thought they were losing and they only had that chance to win the game. So he was trying to save the game by making that play. which sucks. Like, it's bad communication, bad for football, but like for fantasy and for my entertainment, New England being the team that never makes a mental error, making probably the like a butt fumble level error in a football game, probably worse. Very entertaining to my point. Very entertaining.
Yep. But what's your big fantasy takeaway from this one?
I'm gonna make a bold statement. I called him out at the beginning of the year, and he proved me wrong statistically. But Davante Adams is not matchup proof. Last 2 weeks, Rams, New England, 10 points, 6.8 points. He's getting the target share, but he's not executing. Derek Carr has not been that good of a quarterback. His toughest matchups of the year, the toughest defenses that he's had to play, toughest corners. Marshawn Lattimore held him to 1.2 points on 5 targets. And then again, 2 weeks ago at the Rams, Jalen Ramsey, 10.1. New England, I forget his name, the cornerback Jones. He's really good. 9 targets, 4 catches, 28 yards, 6.8. Davante Adams next week, Pittsburgh should be fine. San Francisco, who's probably had the top 3 secondary in football. He is going to lose people championships in championship week if you were able to make it that far.
But you have to play him. You can't not play Davante Adams.
I'm telling you, though, he's going to lose you the championship. I'm warning people. I'm just saying.
It's just, I don't know. It's really tough to bench, I think.
Zay Jones at the Texans. I don't know. That's a close one.
I don't think it's close.
We'll see. I won't bet on it, but
my big take was that Ramondre Stevenson was probably the biggest steal of drafts. He went 19 for 172 and 1. We spoke about it earlier in our, I guess yesterday's preview show for this week, and people were asking about Ramondre Stevenson, saying, is he healthy? Should I play him? And we all said, if he's healthy, play him. And he had a monster game besides that ridiculous fumble at the end there. But yeah, that's the end of it. I dropped him in my dynasty league, and maybe that's the reason I lost today. So, I deserve it. Tennessee Titans versus the Los Angeles Chargers. The Texans were the worst defense against quarterbacks. Well, one of the worst against quarterbacks, the worst against receivers, and really bad against tight ends. So I'm guessing this really high-powered offense with Justin Herbert scored like 50 points.
The team that you said has an elite front seven that you were praising all year.
I would say praising all year. I hate the Titans. I don't praise the Titans.
You praise the front seven all year.
I do say they have a good front seven.
Justin Herbert's been the most sacked quarterback since week 11, second most sacked on the entire season. Highest in QB pressure rate. But that's cool. We'll just point at that. Not the fact that he led a game-winning drive against an over 500 team, and we'll praise Joe Burrow for doing it for an under 500 team. But nevertheless, in a game that they were down 17-0 with the defense forced 5 turnovers, and the Chargers defense couldn't get Malik Willis or Ryan Tannehill off the field. I'm not going to make too many football points. However, I am going to say that offensive line is bad. It was horrendous. All the stats I just told you about the Chargers offensive line, they're all fact. They're absolutely terrible. They got absolutely slaughtered in this game. We had high hopes for all these receivers and the quarterback in this favorable matchup, and they didn't have a chance to execute because Herbert had no time to sit in that pocket. It sucked. Everyone played fine. No one played great. Herbert had a bad game, but he still led a game-winning drive. So it sucked. Move on. They probably played well enough for you to move on, or Hopefully. Good enough. So we'll have to revisit next week. But
I don't have a takeaway from this game except that I knew Derrick Henry was going to have a big game, and he did. Bold statement by me. Derrick Henry had a big game. All right. Cincinnati Bengals versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I was at this game. You were not at this game. You watched some TV. What was your big takeaway from this one?
Look, you could go first. You watched it live.
Sure. From a fantasy standpoint, I mean, I don't know. I think my big takeaway from this one is that the Bucs running backs can't be trusted because they both look the same. I don't think either one does anything better than the other, except for maybe Rashad White catches balls better, and Lenny is, a more powerful runner. But to me, it's just whoever scores the touchdown. If one of them scores a touchdown, is going to score more fantasy points, and that they're a nightmare. They really are a nightmare right now. Leonard Fournette was swapping in and out Rashad White every other drive. It seemed like. It seems like the Josh Jacobs situation with the Raiders 2 seasons ago when he was flipping out with there was Kenyon Drake. So going into the next 2 weeks again, they're the better version of the Panthers right now. It's a more high powered offense. And I will say this: I know the Bucs blew the lead today, but I was prepared to come on here thinking the Bucs are going to win the game and say Bucs are back, they're still a great team, and then they still. I will say this: they're not a bad football team. They're not a good football team. they have very talented players that are not executing at certain points. And from fantasy football, I think they could still execute in your playoffs. But as for the running backs, I think you should look for other options if you can. If you can, if you have multiple running backs on your team, look around. But if you don't, you don't. There's nothing you can do about it. So that's my big fantasy takeaway, at least.
Okay. So in my honest opinion, after watching that game, and I don't like the Bengals. They probably have the second or third best team in football at the moment.
You don't want to play them in the playoffs. Like the AFC is praying that Baltimore wins that division. I guess technically it doesn't really matter, so they would only get one home game. But like they definitely don't want Cincinnati getting the bye. They don't.
I'll be honest.
And the thing is, Cincinnati missing 3 guys on their defensive line, 3 starters, and 2 corners.
I mean, the only way that they're going to lose, because they're hitting in every cylinder right now. Like they caught momentum at the perfect time. The only way they're going to lose in the playoffs is if they get out offensed by Mahomes, Allen, or Herbert. I know you don't like Herbert as much, but I'm just thinking an offense that can match up with theirs and put up as many points.
Yep.
And it's going to be very hard for any of them to top them for football. For fantasy, for the other sides, I mean, Brady and Evans, I have no idea what's going on because they have not been able to click at all, really, this year.
And what's nuts is in the first quarter, they get like 3 for 75 or something
like that.
He
had 13 points in the first quarter. He didn't catch another ball for the rest of the game. I thought I was going to clear in 2 leagues because of Evans and how hot he got early on. He had 80 yards in the first over the first 2 drives of the game on 5 catches and did not catch another ball. He had another 4 targets for the rest of the game. But since week 8, this is his highest scoring game at 13. His next highest is 10.4. That before that 18 game, he has an 8, a 12, and a 9 in there. So very inconsistent. He's catching about 50% of the balls thrown his way. I think a little bit less. I remember seeing numerous clips and from watching Red Zone of like Evans burning a receiver, and there's times where he drops a ball and times where Brady under or overthrows him. Like something ain't clicking there, and it's really frustrating. And I think it's going to be very heavily assessed whether Brady's there or Brady's not there, where Mike Evans is drafted next year, because he's going to put up another 1,000-yard season. He's on pace to do it. I think he's at like 900 yards now. And he's going to wind up going second, third, fourth round, and depending on that ADP. And I know I apologize because a lot of these takes are for next year, really.
It's okay.
But, like, it's hard to make a takeaway this far in the year that's new. Like it is what it is.
Well, I'm going to give you a quick takeaway here. I wrote this down because at the end of the year, I think we got to do a top 10 things we learned. And one thing that I learned is if you believe in the player, don't overthink a situation. Tyreek Hill, we both really believe in Tyreek Hill as a football player. And I think we overthink his situation. And I got him on my dynasty team, but neither of us drafted him anywhere. And look what he's doing. So I think that's one thing that I have going into next year is that, don't overthink the situation. Obviously, there's worse situations, but if you believe in a player, don't overthink the situation per se.
I agree with that, but I did draft Tyreek Hill. Somewhere.
Did you? I didn't know that.
I stacked Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, first and second round.
Which league are you in the playoffs in that one? Or are you
number 1 seed? Got the bye.
There you go. Yeah, of course you did. Well, that's in your ridiculous league. You're playing with a bunch of bimbos.
No, hey, that team is loaded. I drafted great. You can't argue with the draft.
Yeah, I can't, but like, you shouldn't have been able to draft like that. It's nuts. It's nuts. Anyway, my one last take is, you were talking about the football take because I like giving it. Talk about the Bengals and what team could beat them in the playoffs. They're very lucky they're not in the NFC because I think if they face a team with a good defense, I think they're kind of toasted. And here's why. The Bengals go down at halftime almost every game. And it's almost like my Seahawks from like 5-6 years ago. Go down at halftime, make adjustments, come back, win the game. That's kind of what they do. The San Francisco 49ers do not get a 17-0 lead and lose. They won't. The Eagles, I don't think, would either. And I think they're very lucky that there's no defense. Von Miller's out for the Bills, and I think they might have somebody in the secondary still out for the season. I forget who it was. It might be. I could be wrong. I don't think there's a defense that can, compete with the Bengals offense. The Chiefs offense is okay. The Chiefs defense is okay, but the Bengals have their number. So it's like, on any given Sunday, anything can happen. My point being, I think the key to beating the Bengals is actually having a more balanced defense that, that won't give up that lead when it comes down to it. And the Bucks have a really good defense. This is also a fantasy take. I don't really want to play running backs against the Bucks. Mixon had a terrible game, and so did Piron. That front seven is still solid. So, but yeah. And the defense did not lose them the game. I love joking with Nick about Burrow, and Burrow didn't have his best game today. His defense gave him a couple turnovers. Do I think that the turnovers helped? Yes. Do I think Burrow could have came back without two of them? Yes. But they helped. They helped big time. The Bucks defense played their best.
It did help out big time.
All right.
They had 5 turnovers, 4 in scoring position.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
It was. Moving on to Monday Night Football previews. I really don't want to talk about this game. I really, really don't. And I hope it's the lowest.
This is going to be a nail biter.
God. Baker Mayfield, 15.5 fantasy points.
It's like your favorite player in the league. I'm going the under.
I need to root for Baker Mayfield tomorrow. I need the Rams to put up 50. That's a lie. I just need the Packers defense not score 10 fantasy points.
You need him not to throw a pick 6. That's what you need him.
That'd be really bad. Like any touchdown's probably gonna sink me. So that can't happen. Sure. I don't know. I feel like he won't throw a pick 6. So I'll just say I'll say he gets under at 14.
Yep.
Aaron Rodgers at 17.7. I feel like he hasn't hit this number ever at this point, which is weird. I think
Aaron Rodgers and that offense are going to be on fire this week.
I think so too.
I think they're going to dog him. I think he's going over.
I will also go over. I think this is a big Packers game, which sucks for me. Cam Akers, 10.2.
Touchdown or bust. We know the drill with that one.
Yeah. However,
I'm going to bet on no touchdown with Baker Mayfield.
However, last 2 games, he has 19 and 9, both with touchdowns, though. So, yeah, you're right. I'll say no. Aaron Jones, 15.5. I'm in a league, and a friend of mine needs 17 fantasy points to win his championship.
I think he's going to go under, and we'll go to the next running back, and that's why.
A.J. Dillon, we talked about it on our preview show, but why don't you speak a little bit about A.J. Dillon and why people were debating playing him this week?
Sure. I mean, they just went on bye, the 2 weeks before the bye, which is why it's not as talked about. A.J. Dillon took over as RB1 over there the week before the bye. 18 carries, 93 yards, and a touchdown. That was double the carries of Aaron Jones. Saw three catches on 3 targets. Week before, 8 carries, 64 yards, touchdown, 4 targets, 3 catches, 24 yards. Averaged 19 fantasy points in each of those 2 games. He sort of took over as the RB1 over there, and I think that after the bye, they're going to retool the offense towards him. So I think it's going to be A.J. Dillon's backfield this week. So I'm going to go with the over, and I think Aaron Jones.
Okay. I'll agree with you on that one. I'll trust you as my co-host. Van Jefferson, Tutu Atwell, actually 9. Timeout. I don't want to talk about.
Dude, I had to add it because
I don't want to talk about. Okay, you know what? I'm nuking this. Tutu Atwell 9.6, Van Jefferson 9.2, Skoranek 8.1. Which one would you rather play out of those 3?
Fair enough. Van Jefferson 1, Skoranek 2, Atwell 3. I do not know why he has the highest projection.
Sure.
It made 0 sense to me.
I don't want to play any of them, but I'll agree with you.
Yeah.
And that's for the Packers, Christian Watson 12.5. He's been automatic. I just feel like I have to say the over at this point.
He is the only must-start receiver in football at the moment. Rookie receiver.
Rookie. Okay. Yeah, that's fair. And Alan Lazard at 11.3. What has he done the last 2 weeks? I feel like I haven't said his name in weeks.
He's kind of fallen off a little bit with the emergence of Christian Watson.
He's been banged up a little bit too. I mean, he against Chicago, he had 11.7. So,
he's been pretty consistent over the course of the year. It's the injuries that have kind of lingered him. I'm going to say right at that number.
I think you have to say over if you believe it's a big Packers game.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I'll go the over.
6 receptions for 60 yards puts him over.
Well, I think it's more like a 4 for 80 and a touchdown.
Sure.
That's more Lazard.
That'll put him over. Yeah. Tyler Higbee, 8.4. This number sounds high to me.
It sounds low to me. Smash that over.
Really?
Smash that over. Yes, sir.
What did we have last week with Baker? He had 3. He hasn't had a game. What do you mean, no?
No, he's fixing it.
Fixing it. No, he hasn't had a game over double digits since week 10. Week 10 was like 3 months ago at this point. I'm saying under.
He is a white receiver, and Baker Mayfield likes the white targets. I know it's not Matt Stafford, but he's going to follow in his path. Trust me.
Oh, man. Robert Tonyan, 6.1. Touchdown or bust for me. No,
It's
not scoring.
That's it. It's
Yep.
1 catch, touchdown for 1 yard,
Yeah.
7.1.
He's not scoring for me. Not a chance. Alrighty, guys. That was our Monday show. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed it and you're listening on an audio streaming platform like Spotify or iTunes, please give us that 5-star rating and a review. We really would appreciate that from you guys. We love all the love that you've been showing us. If you'd rather watch and listen to the show on YouTube, or if you have watched on YouTube, drop a like on this video, hit that subscribe button, tell your friends about the show. We still have a couple weeks of shows, and then we'll do some shows during the off season, probably once a week. But we want to help you guys out these next few weeks for sure. Keep connecting with us on social media: PrimeTimeFFPod, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Primetime Fantasy Podcast. We will talk to you tomorrow for waiver wire going into the next round of the fantasy playoffs. I don't know how many waiver players we will have. Could be a very short show, but we'll work with it and we'll have fun with it. So thank you guys for listening. Enjoy Monday Night Football tonight, and please pray that the Rams do well. Thank you guys. We'll talk to you tomorrow.